Clare stood at the school gate, gripping her tray of snacks as sweat dripped down her forehead. She has been selling at Rosie High School for months, but today was different. She needs to sell everything because if she doesn't, her mother's landlord will kick them out. She forced a smile as students passed by, ignoring her like she was invisible. Ethan walked out of the classroom leaning on his sleek black sports car, watching the students scatter around during lunch break while waiting for his friends. He was one of the wealthiest kids in school, handsome, confident, and untouchable. But today, his attention wasn't on his rich friends even when they walked past him. His eyes were on the young lady walking through the school gates, balancing a heavy tray of homemade meat pie on her head. Every day, she comes to Rosie High School to sell meat pies and bottled drinks. Ethan has seen her countless times. While other students barely noticed her existence, Ethan found himself interested because she was usually earlier than this. As she set up near the cafeteria, a few students came to buy from her while a group of boys laughed, whispering cruel jokes about the snack girl. Clare ignored them, keeping her head high. Ethan watched, something stirring inside him. He had to talk to her. He walked toward Clare. She was arranging her snacks, pretending not to notice the stares. "Hey," he said casually. Clare looked up, surprised. Hi." Ethan smiled. "Got anything good?" "Meat pies, and Coca-Cola. Do you want some?" She hesitated before responding. He pulled out his wallet, but instead of picking just one item, he bought everything. Clare studied Ethan carefully. She had seen him before, the rich, untouchable guy who lived in a world far from hers. So why was he here, standing in front of her, buying all her snacks? "This is too much," she said, gripping the wad of cash he had just handed her. Ethan nodded. "Yeah. Consider it a tip." She frowned. "I don't take charity." Ethan chuckled. "Then, let's call it a business deal. You make great food, and I'm just a very hungry customer." She hesitated. The money could help her mother with rent, but accepting help from someone like him? It felt off. "I don't take pity," Clare said firmly, taking the accurate amount and shoving the remaining money back into his hand. Ethan smirked, folding his arms. "You're different." Clare didn't reply. Instead, she packed up early. She had already sold everything to him and made enough for the day, thanks to him. As she walked away, she could feel Ethan's gaze lingering on her. Why was he interested in her? She wasn't part of his world. The next day, Clare returned to Rosie High School as usual, determined to ignore Ethan. But from the moment she stepped into the school compound and set up her products, she felt his presence. She wasn't imagining it. Whenever she looked up, he was watching her. Not in a creepy way, but with a strange curiosity. His friends joked and laughed around him, but he barely paid attention. He was too focused on her. Clare pretended not to notice, but her pulse quickened each time their eyes met. She was used to being overlooked, treated like she didn't exist. But Ethan, he saw her, and that scared her more than anything. She was still selling to the students around her when Rachel Carter, Ethan's sister, stood in front of her. "What's your deal?" Rachel sneered, arms crossed. "Why is my brother suddenly interested in some snack girl?" Clare's stomach tightened. She knew this would happen because he was just staring at her without paying attention to them. "I don't know what you're talking about," Clare said calmly. Rachel scoffed. "Listen, whatever game you're playing, drop it. Ethan only talks to girls from his level. Not some." "Rachel." A deep voice cut through the air, interrupting whatever she was saying. Ethan stood behind her, his sharp blue eyes darkening. "Go away," he said, his voice low and serious. Rachel scowled but left. Clare watched Ethan, her heart pounding. Why was he protecting her? This time he didn't buy anything. Instead, he slid a piece of paper across her snack table. Clare frowned, unfolding it. Rosie High School enrollment form. Her breath caught. "What does this mean?" she whispered. Ethan leaned forward. "A chance." Clare felt her throat tighten. You're paying for my school fees?" Ethan shrugged. "It's no big deal." Clare's hands shook as she gripped the form. This was her dream. But accepting it meant accepting Ethan's help. And that terrified her. Thank you so much, she appreciated happily. But please, I have to inform my mum first, she said with a low voice. No problem. But you should be fast, because once we pass the first 3 weeks of this term, no more admission, he said and walked away. When Clare got home, she happily told her mum, but Clare's mother hesitated. Why would a rich boy help you? Clare swallowed. I don't know. Her mother sighed. People like him don't just give without expecting something in return. Clare knew she was right. But what if Ethan was different? After a long pause, she made her choice. You can apply and accept the scholarship. But we must pay him because I don't want you to owe him anything. Clare hugged her mom with so much excitement. That night, she filled out the form and prepared the clothes she would wear to officially submit her application form the next day. Maybe, just maybe, she might be admitted tomorrow. The next morning, she was the first to wake up, getting the snacks ready for her mom to sell in front of their house. Clare walked into Rosie High School as a student for the first time. Although she was yet to be admitted, she is so happy. The halls felt unfamiliar, the students stared. She was no longer the snack girl. Now, she was the charity case. Whispers followed her. She doesn't belong here. I heard Ethan gave her the opportunity. Why would Ethan do this? Clare lifted her chin and walked into the principal's office. Her admission letter, school uniform, and everything she needed as a student were waiting for her because Ethan has made everything ready for her. The principal called someone to show her the school bathroom to change and also take her to her classroom. She was so excited as she followed the student to the classroom. Ethan expected Clare to be grateful. Instead, she kept her distance. In class, she sat at the farthest desk. In the cafeteria, she chose the most quiet table. She barely acknowledged him in the hallways. It was frustrating. In the afternoon after lunch, Ethan finally cornered her near the library. Are you avoiding me? Clare hesitated before answering. I'm just trying to focus on school. Ethan crossed his arms. You mean you don't want people thinking you owe me? She didn't deny it. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I didn't help you because I wanted something in return. Clare exhaled slowly. I know. But people think otherwise. Ethan smirked. Since when do you care what people think? You can't decide to focus on the same school I got you into without even saying hi to me. Clare's lips parted slightly, but she didn't respond. She wasn't sure anymore. Weeks passed, and while Clare still kept her distance, Ethan never stopped watching her. At first, she thought it was her imagination. But every time she turned, his eyes were on her, in class, during lunch, in the hallways. One evening, as she packed up her books in the library, Ethan approached her. You're working too hard, he said. Clare shrugged. I have to. I can't waste this chance. Ethan leaned against the bookshelf. I get it, but you don't have to do this alone. Something about his words made her heart tighten. But she couldn't afford to let him in. She had to remind herself, he was from a different world. But as she stepped out of the library, leaving Ethan there, she started hearing voices. It started with whispers. Did you hear? Ethan likes the scholarship girl. Clare ignored it, but it only got worse. One girl even had the guts to come to her face to face. How does it feel to have a rich boyfriend funding your life? Clare clenched her fists. He's not my boyfriend. The girl laughed. Right. And yet, he looks at you like he owns you. Clare's face burned. When she got home, she stayed awake thinking of how to handle the situation. And she came to a conclusion that she needed to end whatever this was before it became something she couldn't control. The next morning, Clare made a decision. She found Ethan outside by the sports field and walked straight up to him. We need to stop talking. You need to stop looking at me like you own me, and you need to stop following me around, she said firmly. Ethan frowned. What? Clare folded her arms. People are talking. I don't want the attention. Ethan studied her. So you're just going to pretend we don't know each other? Clare swallowed hard. Yes. Ethan chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Fine. If that's what you want. She turned and walked away. But as she did, her heart ached in a way she didn't understand. After that discussion, Ethan stopped looking at her. He passed her in the hallways without a glance. He no longer sat near her in class. Clare should have felt relieved. But instead, she felt empty. One evening, as she walked home, she saw Ethan across the street, laughing with his friends. Her chest tightened. Why did it hurt to see him happy without her? It hurts, but she has to move on because she doesn't want the attention. The next day, while others were enjoying their break and having lunch, Clare sat alone in the library, struggling with an assignment that would be submitted after the lunch break. But to her surprise, Ethan walked in and sat down across her. He didn't speak. He just pulled out his notebook and started studying. After a long silence, Clare whispered, "I thought we weren't talking." Ethan smirked. "I'm just here to study. You're the one talking." She smiled. And for the first time in weeks, it felt like they weren't so far apart after all. She quietly continued with her assignment, and all of a sudden she started solving without struggling again. When the last bell rang for everyone to go home, the student noticed a new poster on the notice board. Rosie High School Annual Dance, this Saturday. While other students rejoiced, Clare didn't care. She wasn't the type to go to school dances. But then, Ethan surprised her. "So, are you going?" he asked casually. Clare scoffed. "Why would I?" Ethan shrugged. "I thought you might want a night off from being serious all the time." Clare hesitated. Was this his way of asking her? Before she could answer, Rachel, Ethan's sister, walked by and smirked. "Don't worry, Clare. Ethan already has a date." Clare's stomach twisted. Why did that bother her? She forced a smile. "Great. Have fun." And just like that, she convinced herself she didn't care. But deep down, she knew she was lying. On the night of the school dance, Clare stayed home, pretending she didn't care. She told herself that school dances were a waste of time. But deep down, she couldn't stop picturing Ethan with someone else. Later that night, she found herself scrolling through social media. Photos from the dance flooded her feed, Ethan looking effortlessly handsome in a suit, his date smiling beside him. Her chest tightened. She slammed her phone down. Why did it feel like she had lost something she never even had? That weekend was the longest weekend she ever had. On Monday, Clare was determined to act normal. She focused on her studies, avoided looking in Ethan's direction, and convinced herself that everything was fine. But when she passed by his locker, she caught him watching her. For the briefest moment, his expression wasn't smug or playful. It was disappointed. Clare quickly turned away, pretending not to notice. Because acknowledging it meant acknowledging her own feelings. Days passed, and things remained tense between them. Then one afternoon, Ethan found Clare alone by the school garden. "I need to ask you something," he said. Clare exhaled. "What?" Ethan stepped closer. "Why do you keep pretending you don't care?" Her heart pounded. "Because I don't." Ethan chuckled bitterly. "Liar." Clare swallowed hard. She hated how well he could read her. Before she could respond, Ethan sighed. "Fine. If you want to keep running, I won't stop you." And with that, he walked away. For the first time, Clare felt like she was the one losing him. Over the next few days, Ethan stopped trying. He no longer teased her, no longer lingered near her. It was as if he had finally given up. Clare should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt empty. One evening, as she walked home, she spotted Ethan across the street, laughing, joking with another girl. Her stomach twisted. Was this what she wanted? That night, as she lay in bed, she whispered the truth to herself for the first time. She had feelings for Ethan Carter. Even when she tried to ignore her feelings, they only grew stronger. She thought about the way Ethan made her laugh, the way he defended her, the way he looked at her like she was worth something. She had spent so long pushing him away, afraid of what it meant to be close to someone like him. But now, she has a choice and she needs to finally stop running. The next day, Clare found Ethan in the library. He glanced up, surprised. "Hey." Clare's palms were sweaty. She had never done this before. "I need to talk to you," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "About?" Clare hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I think I made a mistake." Ethan's expression softened. "What kind of mistake?" Clare met his gaze. Pushing you away. For the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled. And just like that, the walls between them began to crumble. Things weren't instantly perfect between them. Clare still struggled to accept help. Ethan still struggled with coping with her cold character. But slowly, they found their way back to each other. They started talking. Sitting together in class. Sharing quiet conversations in the library. It wasn't a confession of love. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. But just when things were looking good, trouble arrived. Rachel Carter, Ethan's sister, had never liked Clare. And now, she saw an opportunity. One afternoon, she cornered Clare in the girls' restroom. "You really think this will last?" Rachel scoffed. Clare stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Rachel smirked. "Ethan gets bored easily. He might be interested in you now, but trust me, it won't last." Clare's chest tightened. Was she right? Doubt began to creep in. And after that conversation with Rachel, Clare started pulling away again. She avoided Ethan's texts, spoke less in class and kept her distance. But Ethan noticed. One afternoon, he followed her outside. "What's going on?" Clare hesitated. "I just don't want to get in the way." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "In the way of what?" Clare swallowed. "You deserve someone better." Ethan froze. And then, for the first time, he looked truly hurt. "You really believe that?" he whispered. Clare bit her lip. "I don't know." Ethan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Then maybe you never really knew me at all." And with that, he walked away. The days that followed were unbearable. Ethan didn't talk to her. Didn't even look at her. Clare told herself this was for the best. But why did it hurt so much? One afternoon, she found herself standing outside his house, debating whether to knock. But before she could, she heard laughter from inside. Ethan's voice. Another girl's. Her chest ached. She turned and walked away. Maybe she had lost him for good. But she couldn't sleep all night. Couldn't take it anymore. She needed to talk to him. The next morning, she marched into school, straight to where Ethan was. He looked up, surprised. "Clare." She took a deep breath. "I was wrong," she admitted. "I was scared. I didn't want to believe someone like you could care about someone like me." Ethan studied her, his expression unreadable. Clare's voice softened. "But I care about you, Ethan. And if it's not too late, I don't want to keep running." For a moment, there was silence. Then, Ethan smiled. "I was waiting for you to say that," he murmured. And just like that, they found their way back to each other. That very moment, Ethan finally asked Clare out officially. She hesitated at first, but deep down, she knew what she wanted. Not love, but security. Ethan has done everything for her. Her school fees, books, even pocket money when she needed it. With him, she didn't have to worry about her future. So she smiled sweetly and said, "Yes." Ethan was overjoyed. He thought he had finally won her heart. But Clare told herself that it was just temporary. She would stay with him until she graduated, got a job, and could stand on her own. Then she would let him go. She just didn't expect that pretending to love him would feel so real. Weeks passed, and their relationship grew. Ethan was the perfect boyfriend, attentive, caring, and madly in love with her. He made her feel safe. Wanted. Clare kept telling herself that she was only staying for financial security, but can't just say it to him just like that. So she pretended to love and care for him for real. One day, Ethan whispered, "I can't wait to spend my life with you." Clare froze. She forced a smile and changed the subject. But that night, she lay awake, realizing that she was leading him into a heartbreak he didn't deserve. The truth is that Clare still isn't used to this life, sitting among the elite, wearing the Rosie High uniform, being treated like one of them. But every time her eyes darted across the room, they met Ethan's, and her chest tightened. It had been almost 2 months since she became Ethan's girlfriend. Every morning, he waits for her by the school gate, pretending he wasn't watching her walk in. Every lunch break, he will pass by her table with his friends, flashing her a small smile and sometimes eating with her. One afternoon, Claire was struggling in the library over a complex math assignment. Ethan strolled in, leaned over her table, and grinned. "Need help?" She sighed in relief and let him in. Before she knew it, they were laughing over the confusing equations, sitting shoulder to shoulder. Their study sessions became routine. They met at the library, sometimes even after school in the park, where they spread out their books on the grass. They would laugh when Ethan got an answer wrong, and he would smirk when Claire grew flustered over silly mistakes. Slowly, Claire began to lower her walls, letting Ethan into a part of her world she never thought she'd share. On a cool Friday after school, Ethan and Claire went to the cinema. It was her first time in such a fancy place, surrounded by students and people she used to watch from afar. Sitting beside Ethan, sharing popcorn, Claire couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. She wasn't just the snack girl anymore. She was Ethan's girlfriend, and the whole school knew it. By Monday, whispers filled the hallways. "Did you see Claire and Ethan at the movies? She's so lucky. I heard Ethan bought her that new phone." Claire walked through school with her chin held high. She was no longer invisible. Teachers noticed her, classmates invited her to group projects, and she basked in the attention. Ethan, on the other hand, was completely in love. He carried her books, waited for her after classes, and stood protectively by her side. Claire was only enjoying the benefits of being Ethan's girlfriend and nothing more. At home, her mother watched warily. "Claire, don't get carried away," she warned one evening as they sat together. "Remember why you're here. You're smart, Claire, and you can make it on your own. Don't tie your future to a boy, no matter how rich he is." Claire sighed, brushing it off. She loved the life Ethan gave her, the luxury, the protection, the feeling of belonging. Deep inside, she reminded herself that once she was settled, she could stand on her own. She told herself she wasn't in love, she was just playing along. But Ethan was falling deeper. He even introduced Claire to his family, showed her off at school events, and proudly called her his girlfriend. As final exams approached, Claire and Ethan spent nearly every evening together, studying in quiet corners of the library, sitting under trees in the park, or even sneaking in late-night phone calls. Claire's grades improved, her teachers praised her, and her classmates admired her dedication. But behind it all, a small voice inside her whispered, "What will happen after graduation?" Claire knew she was living on borrowed time. She promised herself she would focus on her future, get a good job, and eventually move on from Ethan. But every time he smiled at her, every time he brushed a strand of hair from her face or held her close when she was stressed, she felt herself slipping. Ethan wasn't just her ticket to a better life anymore. He had become something far more dangerous, someone she might actually love. One evening, Claire's mother sat her down. "Claire, you're starting to look like a girl who doesn't know what she wants. Be careful. If you break that boy's heart after all he's done for you, it will haunt you." Claire felt her throat tighten. She knew her mother was right. But she also knew her heart was too tangled up to pull away now. When their final exams arrived, they wrote with the same energy they studied with. And as graduation day came, Claire and Ethan stood at the edge of something neither of them could define. They stayed in the midst of other students celebrating this milestone. Claire stayed by Ethan's side, holding his hand as they stepped into the future. With excitement, Ethan planned an after-graduation dinner at a fancy restaurant. He wanted to celebrate their future together. Claire agreed to meet him there. But before she left home, Ethan decided to pass by her house to pick her up. As he approached the door, he heard voices, Claire and her mother talking. Then, her words shattered his world. "Mom, once I graduate from university and get my first paycheck, I'll break up with Ethan. I was never in love with him. I just needed his money to finish school." Ethan froze. His breath caught in his throat. Claire's mother sighed. "But he really loves you, Claire." "I know. But I can't force myself to love him back." Ethan's vision blurred. Everything had been a lie. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Claire arrived at the restaurant, dressed beautifully, waiting for Ethan. She sat at the reserved table, staring at the untouched candlelit dinner before her. She had checked her phone 100 times. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing. It wasn't like Ethan to be late. He was always the one who waited for her. Maybe he got caught up in something. Maybe his phone died. She took a deep breath and waited. Minutes turned into an hour. Her stomach twisted. Something felt wrong. Finally, unable to sit still any longer, she left the untouched dinner and hurried to Ethan's house. When she arrived, she knocked frantically, expecting Ethan to answer. Instead, the door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Carter. Clare forced a nervous smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Is Ethan home?" Mrs. Carter's face hardened. There was no warmth in her eyes. No kindness. "He's gone." Clare's breath hitched. "Gone? Gone where?" Mrs. Carter folded her arms. "He left town this evening." Clare's heart dropped. He didn't say anything to me," she stammered. Mrs. Carter scoffed. "Of course he didn't." Clare felt her chest tighten. Something wasn't right. She turned to leave, still clutching her phone, hoping, praying, that Ethan would call and say this was all a misunderstanding. Just as she stepped out of the house, she barely had time to react before a sharp slap landed across her face. The impact sent a stinging sensation through her cheek. Stunned, Clare clutched her face, eyes wide in shock. Standing before her was Rachel Carter, Ethan's sister. And she was furious. "You ungrateful human being!" Rachel spat. "You used my brother, and now you have the audacity to show up here acting innocent?" Clare's heart pounded. "Rachel, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie." Rachel snapped. "He heard everything." Clare's body went cold. Rachel's eyes burned with rage. "He heard you and your mother plotting to dump him once you got a job. Do you know what that did to him?" Clare froze. "He knew." "Ethan heard everything." Rachel's voice wavered with emotion. "He loved you, Clare. He trusted you. And you broke him." Tears filled Clare's eyes. I didn't mean to." Rachel scoffed, stepping back. "Save it. You got what you wanted, right? Your secondary education is paid for. He has even secured an admission for you in the private university where my mom lectures. All expense paid. You can go live your perfect life now." Clare shook her head. "Rachel, please, I need to talk to him." Rachel laughed bitterly. "It's too late." Then, with a disgusted glare, she turned and slammed the door in Clare's face. Clare stood there, numb. Her chest felt hollow. She pulled out her phone one last time and dialed Ethan's number. It rang. And rang. And then, voicemail. "Hey, it's Ethan. Can't talk right now. Leave a message." Her vision blurred. She had played this game so well. Pretending. Taking. Lying to herself. But now, the game was over. And for the first time, she was the one left behind. Clare couldn't sleep that night. Everything that Ethan did for her haunted her. Ethan had given her everything. The first day he approached her to buy all her snacks, her admission into Rosie High, her dignity, her voice, protecting her and loving her like mad. But what haunted her most was that he had secured an admission for her in a private university and paid everything for her till she graduated. And what had she given him in return? A lie wrapped in fake love and smiles. How could she have done this to him? How could she take his love for granted? Her mother warned her, but now she has seen how wicked she was to have pretended to love him just to use him to finish school and secure a job. Clare couldn't sleep. The walls of her small room, usually a quiet refuge, now pressed in on her like a punishment. The ceiling fan spun lazily above her, but it couldn't cool the heat rising from her regret. She clutched her pillow, biting her lips to hold back the tears that had already soaked through her bedsheet. But she was interrupted by her mother, Clare. "How was your night? You look disturbed," she whispered worriedly. "I'm fine, Mama," Clare replied, though her voice cracked under the weight of everything she wasn't saying. She didn't know it was morning already. Her mother called Clare to help with making meat pies. Clare's eyes were red and swollen, and her hands moved slowly, distractedly, as she mixed the dough. "Talk to me," her mother said, not looking up from the rolling pin. Clare hesitated, then spilled everything, the way Ethan left her stranded and how his sister told her he heard everything they said last night. Her mother listened in silence. Then she sighed. "I warned you, Clare. I told you love isn't something you fake, especially when the other person is genuine." Clare wiped her face. I thought I could control it. But now, I think I really loved him, Mama. I just didn't know it then. Her mother's gaze softened. Then you have to live with the truth. You played with his heart. But you're still my daughter. And I won't let you drown in shame. Later that day, Claire took a tray of meat pies and headed for a nearby school. She couldn't return to Rosie High, not with the image Ethan had helped her build. There, she was someone. Here, she was invisible again. And maybe that was what she deserved. As she stood by the gate, students walked past without a second glance, and Claire fought the rising sting in her chest. She reminded herself this was who she really was, the snack girl, the hustler, the girl who had to claw her way back from her own mistakes. Still, every time her phone buzzed, she hoped to see Ethan's name. A text. A missed call. Anything. But there was nothing. And that emptiness ached more than the hunger she had once known. Ethan was gone. And this time, she didn't know if he would ever come back. The days that followed were long and gray. Claire moved on autopilot. Wake up, help her mother, sell at the school gate, return home, and try not to cry herself to sleep. She no longer checked her phone as obsessively. What was the point? Ethan had gone silent. Completely. The silence wasn't just from him, it was from the entire world he brought her into. No more texts from Rosie High classmates. No more invitations to hang out. She had faded from their radar the moment she faded from Ethan's life. Sometimes, at night, she sat on the small bench in front of their house and stared at the stars. She wondered where Ethan was. If he was sleeping peacefully. If he was hurting. If he hated her. What hurt most was not knowing. One morning, while wrapping freshly baked pies in foil, her mother glanced at her and said, "You're losing weight." Claire didn't answer. She didn't care. Her mother continued, "University resumes in a few weeks. Are you going?" Claire nodded slowly. "I have to. He already paid for everything. It would be foolish not to go." Her mother eyed her carefully. "You're not going to that school to chase him, are you?" "No," Claire lied. But the truth was tangled. She wanted to go for herself. She wanted to make something of her life. But she also wanted to see Ethan again. To say sorry properly. To see if maybe, just maybe there was still something left. When the university resumed, Claire packed her bags and moved into a small apartment close to the campus. She used some of the money Ethan had once given her to pay the rent, money that now felt like it burned through her pockets. But the school was far from home, and she had no other choice. The first day of lectures was a blur. She barely focused on the professors. Her eyes scanned every hallway, every courtyard, hoping, searching. And then it happened. She was walking out of the main gate after class, her books clutched to her chest, when she saw him. Ethan. Standing beside a sleek car, looking more mature, his jawline sharper, his eyes shadowed by something she couldn't name. Claire froze. Before she could think, her feet moved. She ran to him, heart pounding. "Ethan!" she called breathlessly. He turned slowly. Their eyes met. She began to speak, but words failed her. Instead, she whispered, "I'm sorry. Please. Just let me explain." People were beginning to stare. Ethan frowned and opened the car door. "Get in," he said flatly. Inside the car, she tried to talk, tried to pour out everything she had rehearsed. But even her voice trembled. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was confused. I was scared. Ethan didn't say anything. Claire reached for his hand, but he pulled away gently. "I heard you're here now," he said finally. "Living off campus." She nodded. "Yeah. I needed to. The campus is too far from home." He nodded too, still not looking at her. Silence sat between them like a wall. Then she blurted, "I miss you." Ethan turned his head slowly. "Why, Claire? Because you want to use me again? Or because there's no one else to turn to?" Claire felt her breath catch. "No. I mean, yes, I used you. I did. But I didn't understand what I had until I lost it. Please, Ethan, just give me a chance to show you that I care." He didn't respond. He just started the car. "I'm taking you home," he said quietly. But when he dropped her off at her apartment, He sat for a moment before driving away. Clare stood by the gate, heart torn, tears filling her eyes again. He hadn't said he forgave her. But he also hadn't told her to stay away. And to her, that small crack in his armor was hope. Ethan didn't call the next day. Or the day after. Clare kept checking her phone anyway. She went to class, studied, and returned to her apartment with a heavy heart. Her thoughts were constantly tangled in what-ifs. One evening, as she sat alone on the floor of her room surrounded by textbooks, a message finally came in. "Ethan, are you free tomorrow evening?" Her heart skipped. "Yes. Any time. I'll pick you up by 5. Ethan replied. The next day, Clare could barely concentrate in class. She changed her outfit 3 times before settling on something simple but clean. When Ethan arrived, he barely said a word. They drove in silence until they reached a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town. They ate, mostly in silence, until Ethan finally spoke. "I wanted to ask you one thing," he said. "Why me? Why pretend to love me?" Clare blinked, trying to find the right words. "Because I didn't think someone like you could ever really want me. I felt like a fraud the whole time. But you made me feel special. Safe. Like I belonged. I held on to that, even when I knew I wasn't giving you what you deserved." Ethan looked down at his glass. "So why come back?" "Because I realized I was wrong. You weren't just my escape, Ethan. You were the only person who ever saw me, not the snack girl, not the charity case, but me. I miss that. I miss you." He looked at her, pain and longing clashing in his eyes. "Clare, I'm trying to move on." Her throat tightened. "Are you seeing someone?" He hesitated. "Not exactly." Silence again. When they got back to her place, he didn't go inside. But before driving off, he said, "Be careful with people's hearts, Clare. Not everyone recovers easily." She stood there long after his car disappeared down the street, a storm of guilt and hope swirling in her chest. Despite his words, Ethan began calling again. Sometimes it was late at night. Other times, in the middle of the day. At first, their conversations were short. Updates about school, shared memories, silent pauses. Then, gradually, the laughter returned. So did the late-night chats, the weekend meetups, the study sessions that led to walks through the university garden. Clare found herself falling into old patterns, leaning on Ethan, relying on his warmth. And he let her. Even though part of him knew better. He took her to school events again. Introduced her as someone important to his new circle of friends. Sometimes he touched her hand too long, brushed her hair behind her ear. And just like that, they were together again. Their relationship rekindled like a match thrown on dry leaves. Ethan spoiled her all over again. Shopping sprees, dates, romantic surprises. He believed her tears. He wanted to believe her words. But something in him stayed on guard. They studied together, laughed again, and even took late-night walks. It felt real. But for Clare, the affection never ran deep. She was comfortable, not committed. Rachel didn't know. And when Rachel gained admission into the same school during Clare and Ethan's second year, everything changed. Rachel caught them holding hands near the cafeteria. "What is she doing here with you again?" she demanded. Ethan tried to laugh it off, but Rachel wasn't having it. "She used you once, Ethan. Are you going to let her do it again?" Clare remained calm, but inside, she was boiling. Rachel was a threat, one that might make Ethan pull away. She had to act fast. So that evening, she cooked dinner for Ethan and invited him over. They shared wine, music, and comfort. Ethan forgot his sister's words. But Clare hadn't forgotten her mission. It was in their second year that Clare met Henry, a smart, ambitious guy from her department. He wasn't rich, but he was attentive, fun, and most of all, he made her feel powerful. With Ethan, she was always the one being helped. With Henry, she was the one who led. And that difference made her feel alive. She started seeing Henry behind Ethan's back. At first, it was just study sessions. Then it turned to lunch dates. Then hand-holding. Then kisses. Ethan noticed the distance. Clare became distracted, often avoiding his touch. When he asked what was wrong, she'd brush it off. Until the day he caught her with Henry, kissing outside the school library. Ethan couldn't breathe. The sight of Clare laughing intimately with another man felt like a slap. He stood frozen for a moment, the world around him spinning. The boy with her, Henry, was someone he recognized from campus. A low-level student, far from the elite circle Ethan belonged to. But Clare looked at Henry with a softness she never showed Ethan. His world crumbled. And Clare? She looked him in the eye and said, "I don't love you, Ethan. I never did. I was just trying to love you, but with Henry, everything feels perfect." Ethan didn't speak. He turned and walked away, his chest hollow, his dreams shattered. And Clare walked off with Henry, not realizing she had just lost the only man who truly loved her. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He stared at his ceiling, heart pounding with confusion and anger. Every sacrifice, every ounce of love he had given her, felt like dust. And now this. The next day, he didn't show up to lectures. His friends tried calling him, but he didn't answer. When Rachel found out, she confronted Clare in front of the cafeteria. "You used him. You never deserved my brother," Rachel spat. Clare stood still, emotionless. "I never asked for his love." Rachel stared at her in disbelief. "You're going to regret this." That same Friday, Miam, one of Ethan's course mates, saw Ethan wandering out of the campus gate, eyes filled with tears. She has always admired him from afar, the quiet, brilliant guy who rarely spoke unless it mattered. But now, he looked like a boy who had lost everything. She was still daydreaming when he heard screams. Ethan almost stepped into the busy road. She screamed and yanked him back just in time. "Are you trying to die?" she asked breathlessly. Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were vacant. Miam didn't think. She took him to her hostel, sat him down, and made him tea. She didn't ask questions. She just stayed by his side. The next day, she cooked jollof rice, told him jokes, played funny skits on her phone, and forced him to laugh. On Sunday morning, Ethan finally broke his silence. "She used me, all this time, she used me." Miam didn't interrupt because she wanted him to pour out his frustrations. Plus, she don't even know what he was talking about. She just sat there, holding his hand. By Monday, Miam left for school, leaving Ethan because he still needed time to rest more. But before she returned in the evening, Ethan was gone. He didn't leave a note. But Miam found her bed folded, the dishes washed, and $50 placed neatly on her reading table. When she got to school the next day, she saw him sitting quietly in the front row. "Thank you," he said as she walked past. She nodded. "Any time." But from that day, Ethan changed. He no longer smiled much. He focused on his studies, ignored Clare completely, and avoided any kind of closeness with any girl. Miam kept her distance, respecting his healing space. Clare, on the other hand, couldn't focus. Everything felt wrong. Henry was exciting at first. He made her feel powerful, in control. The truth was, Henry, her new boyfriend, was becoming her obsession. He was sweet, ambitious, and most importantly, Clare felt superior around him. With Ethan, she always felt indebted, like she owed him her future. She felt free with Henry. But Ethan's absence carved a hole in her chest. She began watching Ethan from a distance, hoping he'd glance her way. But he never did. She sent him a text one night, "Can we talk?" No response. The silence cut deeper than any insult. Rachel didn't speak to her either. Word had spread. Clare was no longer admired. People called her an opportunist. One afternoon during a lecture, the professor asked a tough question. Ethan raised his hand and answered perfectly. Miam clapped softly. Others joined. Clare sat frozen as Ethan turned to Miam and gave her a small smile. After the lecture, Clare tried to approach him. "Ethan, please." He cut her off. "I'm in a relationship now." Before she could respond, he pulled out his phone and dialed. "Miam," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby. "Can you meet me? I want us to have lunch." Miam, surprised, agreed. Clare watched in disbelief as Ethan walked off with a confidence she hadn't seen since their breakup. She had lost him. And it was entirely her fault. Miam was confused. "What's going on?" she asked as they sat at the school cafe. I need your help, Ethan said quietly. Just for a while. Pretend to be my girlfriend. Miam raised a brow. Why? To keep her away. And to help me move on. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But don't fall in love with me, she said jokingly. Ethan gave a half-smile. Too late for that. They laughed, for the first time in days. Clare couldn't believe her eyes. Ethan and Miam were everywhere, laughing, studying, even walking hand in hand. At first, she thought it was an act. But the more she watched, the more it felt real. Jealousy clawed at her. She started avoiding Henry, snapping at him for no reason. The fun had worn off. Henry wasn't Ethan. He didn't inspire her to study. He didn't care about her dreams. She made up her mind. She had to win Ethan back. But it might already be too late. Clare sat in her room, holding her phone tightly, her thoughts swirling. She had spent days trying to figure out what to say to Ethan, how to undo the damage she had done. But nothing came close to easing the ache in her chest. Ethan had chosen Miam, openly, in front of everyone. The fake relationship had become real. Clare could see it in the way Ethan smiled at Miam, how he looked at her with peace, not passion. It hurt more than she expected. She had been blind, chasing control and influence, only to lose something rare, genuine love. Henry noticed the shift in Clare. She was quieter, distracted, often staring into space during their conversations. One evening, as they sat outside her apartment, he asked, Clare, is there something you're not telling me? She forced a smile. Just stressed. School and all. But Henry wasn't convinced. He leaned closer. Are you still thinking about him? Clare looked away. The silence was louder than any answer she could give. Miam, on the other hand, wasn't used to attention. So when Ethan started treating her like the center of his world, she was skeptical. Why me? She asked one afternoon as they walked through the campus garden. Ethan smiled. Because you saved me when I had nothing to give. You didn't expect anything in return. You just helped. Miam blushed, tucking her braids behind her ear. But what about Clare? She made her choice, Ethan said firmly. I'm not going back there. Even with the assurance, Miam treaded carefully. She had crushed on Ethan and has watched Ethan crumble, and though their connection was deepening, she didn't want to be a rebound. But Ethan wasn't rushing. He respected her pace, cherishing the peace she brought. Miam noticed the stares, the whispers. People were beginning to treat her like they once did to Clare. Only this time, it was because she had taken the heart of the most sought-after guy on campus. That night, Miam considered pulling away from Ethan. She didn't want to be in a war she didn't start. But Ethan saw the shift in Miam's behavior. He confronted her. Talk to me. What's going on? Miam hesitated. I don't want to be a replacement. Ethan pulled her closer. Miam, I'm with you because I want to be. His words brought tears to her eyes. But they also gave her courage. One Sunday evening, Clare stood in front of Ethan's off-campus apartment, holding a handwritten letter. Her hands trembled. She knocked. When he opened the door, the sight of her drained the smile from his face. Please read this, she whispered. He took the letter but didn't invite her in. Later that night, he opened it. Her words were raw, regretful, full of longing and pain. She confessed everything, how she had used him, how she lost herself, how she realized too late that he was her only truth. Ethan stared at the letter for a long time, then threw it away. His healing had begun, and he wasn't going back. Miam tried to keep her distance after Ethan made their relationship public, even though it was just pretend. But the problem was, the more time they spent together, the less fake it felt. Ethan, still carrying emotional wounds, found comfort in Miam's quiet strength. They studied together in the library, shared silly jokes in between lectures, and occasionally cooked in Miam's small apartment. On one of the weekends, Miam invited Ethan over to study, but the evening turned into a heart-to-heart. Miam stared at her notepad for a few seconds before finally speaking. Ethan, she began, her voice low, can I tell you something? He turned to her, sensing the shift in her tone. Of course. She took a breath, eyes still on her phone. I know we started this as a lie, she said quietly, but it's not fake to me anymore." Ethan paused, surprised. "I don't want you to think I'm trying to complicate anything. I know you've been through a lot, and I respect that. I respect your healing, your space." Ethan nodded slowly, listening. "But I would be lying if I said I don't feel something," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. "For months now, I've tried to act like all I want is friendship. But it's more than that for me. And I'm not telling you this because I expect anything. She paused, blinking quickly, "I just wanted you to know." The silence that followed made her stomach twist. She turned her face away quickly. Ethan reached for her hand. "Miam." She froze. He took her hand gently, lacing his fingers through hers. "I feel the same way." She blinked. "What?" "I didn't know it at first. I didn't want to believe it. After Clare, I thought my heart wasn't safe with anyone. But you," he smiled. "You saw me at my worst. You didn't try to fix me or force me to love you. You just stayed." Tears welled up in Miriam's eyes, unbidden. "You helped me believe in peace again," he continued. "You brought light when I was drowning in darkness. I wasn't planning to say anything today. But since we're being honest, Miriam, I want to be with you." She covered her mouth in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "I'm very serious," Ethan said, sitting up straighter. "So serious, I want you to be my girlfriend. I even want you to meet my parents this tomorrow Sunday." Her eyes widened. "Your parents?" "Yes. I want them to meet you." She smiled and hugged him. On Sunday afternoon, Ethan took Miriam to his family home. The house smelled like cinnamon rolls and roasted chicken when Ethan opened the door for Miriam. She wore a soft cream-colored dress, modest and elegant, her nervousness clear in the way she clutched her bag. But Ethan held her hand, giving her a silent message, "I've got you." His mother was the first to meet her. "You must be Miriam," she said warmly, pulling her into a hug. "He hasn't stopped talking about you." Miriam smiled shyly. "It's an honor to meet you, Ma." Then came Ethan's dad, a kind man with soft eyes who nodded approvingly as he shook her hand. And finally, Rachel. The moment Rachel saw her, she smiled and said, "So you're the girl who finally gave my brother peace." Miriam laughed softly. "I just listened." "No," Rachel said, looping her arm through Miriam's. "You did more than that. And I already love you for it." The rest of the evening felt like a dream. They all laughed over dinner, Rachel insisting on showing Miriam her childhood photos of Ethan, his parents sharing embarrassing stories. And through it all, Ethan watched Miriam like he was still in awe of her. As they sat outside later that evening, watching the sky deepen into night, Ethan turned to her. "I'm not afraid anymore," he whispered. "You make me feel safe." And for the first time, Miriam leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart full, her silence saying everything words couldn't. But in the midst of this love, Clare has been struggling. That Sunday morning, Clare stood by the window, watching the soft dew fall over the rooftops. Her phone buzzed on the bed behind her, but she didn't move. She knew it was Henry again, and she knew exactly what he wanted. Money. It started small. At first, he was sweet, loving, and attentive. He sent her voice notes in the morning, waited for her after lectures, and called her his queen in front of his friends. But soon, the affection began to fade, like a candle burning out slowly. The daily messages turned into weekly replies. The warmth in his eyes became cold glances. And then came the demands. "Babe, I'm really broke. Can you help me with $10K? At first, Clare didn't hesitate. She still had some of the money Ethan had given her before they broke up, money she had saved secretly, hoping to use it wisely. But she told herself helping Henry was part of love. She was committed. She wanted to prove to herself, and maybe even to Ethan, that she could be loyal too. But the requests didn't stop. One week it was $10K. The next, $20K. Then $50K for a business idea. Then money for data, clothes, shoes, even for his mother's medications. Every time she tried to ask where the money went, Henry got defensive. "Is it a crime to help your man? You always have something to say, Claire." She apologized. Every time. Because she loved him. Because she didn't want to be the girl who once used a guy and did it again. Because she thought Henry was different. Until the day she saw him. She had finished class early and decided to surprise Henry at his hostel with food. It was something she used to do for Ethan. It felt romantic, like love in motion. But when she got to his compound, she saw the shoes. A girl's slippers, bright pink, freshly worn. Her heart skipped. She walked in quietly. Henry always left his door open during the day. And there he was, shirtless, standing close to a girl, holding her waist and whispering something that made her giggle. Clare froze. Her soul shattered into quiet pieces. "Henry," she whispered. He turned, startled but not ashamed. "Clare, what are you doing here?" The girl smirked and walked past Clare like she was nothing. Clare's hands trembled as she dropped the nylon bag of food. "I brought you lunch," she said weakly. Henry scoffed. "Next time, call. You can't just show up like this." Tears burned in her eyes. "Who is she?" "A friend," he said flatly. "Why are you making it a big deal?" She left without another word, her heart heavier than it had ever been. That night, she cried until her pillow was soaked. But still, she didn't leave him. She went back. She pleaded. She apologized for being too clingy, for not trusting him, for interrupting. She didn't know what hurt more, seeing him with someone else or how willing she was to beg him to stay. Henry saw it. He saw her weakness, and he took advantage of it. "Fine," he said one day. "We can still be together. But I need your support. I'm not like Ethan. I'm not rich. I need a woman who can help me level up." And Clare gave it. Every last kobo. She paid his rent one semester. She bought him a used phone when his got bad. She gave up outings, data, and even skipped meals to support him. Until the day her bank app showed $2,000 remaining. Her heart stopped. She had spent it all. The last money Ethan had ever given her. The savings she once guarded like treasure. Gone. She told Henry. He laughed. "Wait, you're broke?" he asked, almost like he had heard a joke. "Wow. So what am I supposed to do now?" Clare was speechless. "Henry, I gave you everything. I chose you over." "Over Ethan," he scoffed. "Girl, you had a goldmine and dumped him for me. That was your first mistake." He left her standing there, in front of his door, without another word. And days passed. He stopped picking her calls. He stopped replying messages. Then she saw him again, this time at the campus restaurant, with another girl. Holding her hand. Feeding her. Laughing in that same warm way he once did with her. Clare's knees buckled, but she didn't cry this time. She was numb. Numb from the betrayal. Numb from the regret. Numb from the truth she didn't want to admit. She had once used Ethan. Now she had been used too. But karma wasn't done with her. It was just pain echoing back at her because now, he still sent him a message for more money. Meanwhile, on Monday in Ethan's family house, Ethan, Miam, and Rachel loaded their bags into the trunk. The air was light with laughter. Ethan's father hugged each of them in turn, and his mother wiped a proud tear from her eye. "You three take care of each other," she said, her gaze lingering on Miam. "Especially this one. She's precious." Miam blushed. Rachel beamed. And Ethan simply took Miriam's hand in his and nodded, "Always." The ride back to school was filled with music and stories. Miam and Rachel had bonded like sisters over the weekend, laughing late into the night, cooking together, even sharing hair care routines. Rachel, who once guarded her brother like a soldier, had finally found someone she could trust him with. "She makes you better," Rachel had whispered to Ethan the night before. "And that's all I ever wanted for you." Now, back on campus, the weeks began to pass in a blur. Ethan didn't just love Miam, he adored her. He showed it in every way: surprise lunch deliveries, holding her hand through evening walks, studying until midnight in the library, and cuddling during their movie nights. He spoiled her not just with money, but with presence. He was her peace, her joy, her home. Their love grew like a carefully tended garden, slow, patient, and blooming in every season. Meanwhile, Clare watched from afar. She saw it all. The inside jokes, the shared earphones, the way Ethan would wipe food from Miriam's lip gently during lunch. She had never really broken up with Henry, but they were strangers now. Henry barely acknowledged her anymore. He had moved on, faster and more easily than she ever expected. Claire, who once had everything, now had only memories. She didn't hate Miriam. If anything, she envied her. Not because of her looks or her grades, but because she had what Claire never gave Ethan, genuine love. Final year was demanding, but it drew Ethan and Miriam even closer. Their nights were filled with reading past questions, discussing theories, and encouraging each other through long study hours. They shared ambitions and fears. Miriam wants to start a fitness and wellness brand after school. Ethan, on the other hand, an edtech startup. They made plans. They dared to dream. One night, after a long study session, Miriam chose a movie to unwind, The Fault in Our Stars. It was quiet and emotional, with moments that made them both cry and laugh. As the credits rolled, she sat cross-legged on his bed, wiping her face. "That was beautiful," she said. "It was," Ethan replied, watching her. She turned to him, her eyes glassy. "Thank you for letting me in. For letting me see you." Ethan didn't reply. He just leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft, slow, tender, and perfect first kiss, years of pain and healing folded into a single moment. She closed her eyes and melted into it, feeling safe, seen, and loved. On the final exams week, the campus buzzed with tension. Sleepless nights. Coffee. Whispered prayers before entering halls. Ethan and Miriam supported each other like always, waking early, reviewing notes, reminding each other to breathe. When the last paper ended, the entire faculty turned into a party. Students threw papers into the air, screamed with joy, and signed white t-shirts with colored markers. Dr. Ethan Loading, that was what Rachel signed on his. And on Miriam's, Miriam the Genius. Ethan wore his shirt like a crown. Miriam's was covered in love notes from classmates who admired her quiet brilliance. They stood together in the middle of the crowd when Clare approached. She looked different, older, wiser, softer. Her eyes held regret and longing. "Ethan," she began, her voice shaky, "I'm not here to beg for you to take me back. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I was young, selfish, blind, and I didn't see your worth until it was too late." Rachel stood beside them, arms folded. But she nodded. "I forgive you," she said quietly. Ethan looked at Claire for a long moment. "I forgive you too," he said, voice firm. "But I've moved on." Then he turned to Miriam, who was watching silently. "In fact," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket, "there's something I've been meaning to do." Miriam's breath caught. In front of everyone, his classmates, Rachel, and a stunned Claire, Ethan got down on one knee and held out a velvet box. "Miriam, you didn't just heal me. You taught me how to love again. Will you marry me?" Miriam's hands flew to her mouth. "Ethan, yes. Yes." The crowd erupted in cheers. Rachel hugged them both. Claire stood still, her heart breaking in slow motion, but deep down, she knew this moment wasn't stolen from her. She had given it away. As Miriam and Ethan walked out of the celebration hand in hand, Ethan lifted Miriam in his arms and whispered, "Let's go on a date tonight and start planning our wedding." She giggled, tears of joy slipping down her cheeks. "Okay, baby." And as they disappeared into the soft golden light of dusk, laughter echoing behind them, one question lingered in the hearts of everyone watching. Could Claire ever find real love after all the hearts she broke? Well, tell me in the comments section if you feel so. Remember to like and subscribe for more interesting and educating stories. Thank you.